A world slowly swallowed by the sky. It begins like a whisper from the clouds. A soft drizzle tapping rooftops, soaking the sidewalks, gliding down windows like silent fingers tracing the glass. And for the first few days, it feels ordinary, familiar, even calming, because rain has always been a part of life. A rhythm, a cleansing, something expected. But then, time passes, and the rain does not end. The skies remain sealed in an unbroken sheet of gray, an endless curtain of clouds stretching from horizon to horizon, and as the hours turn to days, and days to weeks, the world beneath begins to understand that this is no passing storm, no seasonal downpour, but something far more ominous, something persistent, planetary, and unstoppable. At first, the changes are subtle. The streets glisten longer after the rain, the air feels heavier, and puddles linger in places where they should have evaporated hours ago. But then, the soil becomes oversaturated, unable to drink another drop, and the water begins to gather in fields, crawl up curbs, and lap at the foundations of homes. Storm drains choke, rivers rise, and slowly, methodically, the world begins to flood. By the end of the first month, low-lying regions are overwhelmed. Farmlands in the Midwest resemble vast brown lakes. Cities like Jakarta, Lagos, and New Orleans are already under evacuation orders. And the coastal edges of countries, once crowded with life, become ghost zones, abandoned to the advancing tides. But water is just the beginning. Without sunlight piercing the thick perpetual canopy of cloud, temperatures begin to drop, not drastically at first, but steadily enough to affect ecosystems, to delay harvests, to alter animal migrations, and to confuse the internal clocks of plants and people who no longer see the sun, who no longer feel the warmth of a clear sky on their skin. By month 3, global agriculture begins to unravel. Crops drown in their fields, roots rot where they stand. Greenhouses struggle to simulate the conditions of a world that no longer exists, and food shortages ripple across continents, not instantly, but gradual, like a slow bleed that you only notice when it's nearly too late. And as the months wear on, the rain begins to rewrite the very map of Earth. What were once valleys become lakes. Deserts like the Sahara, once scorching and dry, transform into alien wetlands, and ancient riverbeds long dormant begin to flow again with torrential force, fed by mountain runoff and skies that never cease to pour. Entire ecosystems collapse beneath the weight of the storm. Pollinators drown, soil erodes, birds vanish into skies they can no longer navigate, and even marine life suffers as freshwater deluges pour into the oceans, altering salinity, disrupting currents, and destabilizing the delicate web of life that has taken millions of years to form. By month 6, humanity is exhausted. The constant drumbeat of rain is no longer background noise. It's a psychological siege, an unending pressure that wears down the mind, frays the nerves, and reshapes the human spirit into something more anxious, more fearful, more desperate. Depression spikes, suicide rates climb, children grow up without ever seeing blue sky, and all the while the water keeps rising. Now cities become islands, if they survive at all. New York, London, Mumbai, Tokyo, each one a cluster of rooftops and towers, barely holding out against the encroaching sea. Transportation is no longer by road or rail, but by boat and drone and raft. Governments issue emergency food drops. Refugee numbers swell by the tens of millions. Conflicts flare over land, resources, and shelter on higher ground. And in the shadows of crumbling skyscrapers and silent power grids, a question begins to rise. How much longer can we hold out? Because by month 9, the situation is no longer sustainable. The carbon cycle is broken. Photosynthesis has nearly stopped. Oxygen levels begin to fall. Not catastrophically, not yet, but enough to notice, enough to struggle for breath on humid nights when the air feels thick and still and wrong. And all around the globe, people wait, not for rescue, not for hope, but for something, anything to change. And then, almost as suddenly as it began, it stops. The rain ceases, the clouds begin to break, the sun returns brilliant, searing and merciless, but the nightmare isn't over. Now comes the drying, the stagnant, disease-ridden aftermath. Waterlogged cities bake under relentless sunlight. Mosquitoes swarm, bacteria thrive, infections spread faster than vaccines can be delivered. Mold climbs walls, roads collapse under their own weight. The planet steams, boils, and decays in silence. What was once civilization is now a rusting archipelago of survivors, scattered across a drowned world that no longer resembles the one we inherited. So what if it rained for an entire year? It would not be a story of a storm, it would be a story of slow motion collapse. A world undone not by fire or impact, or war, but by water falling endlessly from above. Not in rage, not in fury, but in a quiet, relentless whisper that says, I will not stop. And in the end, Earth wouldn't explode, it wouldn't freeze, it wouldn't burn, it would simply